We are all swinging like a pendulum through duality at times. To free ourselves from this swing through duality and into wholeness, we need to identify that internal process, spectrum, and allowance. In PSA, we will dive into the process within spectrums that are pushed by momentum, which create the structured illusion of our movement through cycles. The same cycles and patterns that form our lives. With body balancing techniques, I'll bring to light new ways that we can practically shift out of oscillation and into direction, shifting our whole paradigm. Welcome to your weekly PSA. Welcome to this week's episode of PSA. We are going to be talking about grounding. Now, I mean grounding in the sense of our inner child without grinding our inner child. We're going to be going through some practices for CNS connection, that central nervous system connection to our inner systems as the younger self. And this is a way that we can begin to cultivate safety. So the PSA that we're gonna really look into today is that extreme of grounding on one side, and we'll go into this a little bit more, and on the other side of that, it's going to be that grinding. So we're really looking at this full spectrum between grounding and grinding. Now, what is that middle part? What is that balance that we're all looking for? And this is something that comes up a lot, especially a lot of my central nervous system clients that look for new self-regulating techniques that we'll go through at the end of this. But it really comes down to the root of it, which is safety between that sense of grinding and that sense of grounding. Like, what is that thing that keeps pushing us in between spaces of feeling really centered and rooted, and that illusion of safety that grounding gives us? Because sometimes we can just be way too grounded. You can be too much into your body, or too much into your mind, or too much into the solution. And you can be really grounded in that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're safe. You can be grounded in your financial status, or maybe your relationship status, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it provides that sense of safety, because safety is that balance. Now, when we look at the other end of that extreme and that excess, it's going to be that grinding period, and that grinding sense is like we're continuously looking for, trying to create this safety, trying to create this, grinding ourselves out to find another partner, or get a better job, or get a better car, or look for all of these things that we feel like are the continuing narratives that are going to give us that safety, victimizing ourselves. There's so many things, so many ways. I mean, just as humans, we're clever as fuck that we can just find so many ways to grind ourselves down, and I mean, just for me, especially coming from New York, there's been so many different ways that you grind, and we don't even understand or be able to comprehend what we're actually grinding for. So we kind of lose that. So for me, the question came up was what is this momentum that's pushing me between these two spaces, And really it comes down to the approach that we go towards grinding, Yeah, don't get me wrong. I love the hustle. You can't knock it. And there's really good ways of grinding and good things that you can get out of it. But when we're grinding that inner child and something that comes down to safety, you can't really grind safety into your body. And also that approach to grounding, what are we grounding ourselves into? Because if we're trying to settle down roots, and this is why it's so connected to the energetic body of the root chakra, is, the safety is, it's this approach that, if we are going to be grounding ourselves, if we're grounding ourselves in our financial status, then we're going to continuously find ourselves going into that grinding state and continuously looking for, a salary raise, or if we're grounding ourselves in a relationship, then we're going to keep grinding ourselves into like being the best partner that we can and achieving that unconditional love, which doesn't exist, but that'll be another story for another day. But really what this is the approach to these two extremes, and bringing that, and if we can slow down or really fine tune that approach, we can settle into that balance, which is settling into safety. So I start this off by asking, what does grounding mean to you? Now, it most likely means bringing your conscious thought or spirit or even an idea into your body or into this physical realm. But if you were to ask what it meant to your 10-year-old younger self, what would they say? When we're addressing the inner child, identification or work, as some call it, I don't want to go there. What are we really doing by connecting this with the part of us that is existed in that point in time? I mean, if we really think about it, it's kind of like time travel, basically. So approaching this connection is about the process. And how do we get there? How did this younger self process the experiences that have put us into this position to think, how do we know of the words and experiences that we encounter in this present moment? So this connection is essential because just as we have good and bad habits that have grown into our Garden of Eden, they're all started from seeds. And in pulling up those roots and replacing old patterns, triggers, and reactions within our CNS, we must go back and address the seeds they came from and they were born of. Which means returning to the ground from which we had and were grown from as well. When you got in trouble, most kids were threatened with the imminent consequence of being grounded. What does this do to that young, ripe central nervous system is that it starts to give this emotional reactive state to the word grounding. Now, as we are coming into a balanced state and point in our life, we are rewiring the tone to this word through doing it. How has that inner little one been grounded through the years, though? What emotions are they storing, harboring, and clinging to when you go to step into that root space within your body, mind, and being? If you're feeling resistance, resentment, anger, frustration, or rage, these are most likely old emotions stored by your inner child and this inner little human that has been avoiding this very process of action all these years. In what ways do we address and rewrite these emotions and bring them out of the grinding of being grounded while allowing this inner us to rise residues free? Some steps we can take are within the SPA method by first identifying the scale, which lies between the present you and the little one. Then laying down a cognitive and emotional bridge through the process in which it was built to reach them. Lastly, it's the embracing and accepting them, which when you reach them with open, loving arms into this present now, you can begin to bring them from that past into the present so that you can begin walking into the future. Now, let's shift our present paradigms by reestablishing the value of going back and bridging those connections with our younger selves, dissolving the stains of resentment, frustration, anger, and finally uprooting those deep-seated energies and replacing them with loving new feelings of assurance, pride, and forgiveness of being safely grounded within the body. After all of these years of grinding, how has that left you feeling? So a little bit more into this topic as we're looking between this swing, and really it's you being in the present, when you're in your present body and this thing shows up and you're not really feeling grounded, you're not feeling really safe, you're feeling really grinded, and you're just swinging like a pendulum back and forth from that grinding and that grounding state, trying to find some equilibrium and some orientation. This sometimes, not all the time, can come from that little one that's in the past. So if we take that same spectrum and we look at in the past and we place that little one on that grinding side, right? And we place this future you in that grounding side. And right now, in this present moment in your body, you are ultimately looking for that safety. So placing yourself in that middle. These are some of the ways that we can start to begin to bridge these gaps between that present state of now, because you are always safe, and that is the reassurance that we're looking for. And it's really a reminder that we're in that space. It's just the illusion that we're being swung because of the approach that is being taken. So if somebody comes to you, or maybe you get a call and you don't necessarily feel safe, or you're walking through a neighborhood and you don't necessarily feel safe, it's this approach that this external environment has either on your body, on your mind, or on your soul that is giving you that illusion that you are not safe. And granted, yes, there may be a situation where you are not safe, these things do come up. But what we can do is remind our body consistently with the central nervous system techniques that can give it that truth and give it that gift that that little one is safe, because your present now, your adult self now, can preserve that. It may come through protection, it may come through affirmation, it may come through signaling to your body physically. So what we're going to go through is a short somatic practice that you can use daily to come back into the body and help recognize this and communicate it with your central nervous system. So we're going to start from the bottom up. Begin to pay attention to the sensations of the symptom itself, the physical details of it. Sensations are signals, and from a bottom-up perspective, we can work with them directly. In this moment, play with the hypothesis that this sensation might be a movement that is being held in, held back, or held down. Take a few minutes to check back in with the details of this symptom. Instead of imposing a mental solution, work to allow that part of your body to make small movements that are not about relieving the symptom, but rather telling its story through moving it. For instance, if the symptom is tightness, let it tighten more, because that is what it's already doing or saying. If it aches, how would you let your body express the ache directly? Nothing fancy, just let that part of your body move a bit, without explanation, but with lots of caring attention. This is a part of allowing your body to lean into safety, to allow it to do what it's already doing naturally, because this is what we're really bringing into the central nervous system, is a natural communication with the path of least resistance. Our central nervous system is made up of electrical circuits and electrical signals. So by us creating any type of resistance, whether if it's in the brain or if it's in the body, the way that we solve this and change or really shift that paradigm and shift that approach and slow it down, so rest into safety, is by leaning into that resistance. And by leaning into that resistance, we are letting go of any preconceived notions, illusions, thoughts, feelings, things that we may have felt were real but not necessarily true, to allow the body to settle into. Thank you for tuning in to this week's PSA. I trust that with this widened perspective of simultaneous contrast, we can begin to identify and apply these practices to help self-regulate the momentum of these swings and dissolve rotating cycles into rocketing spirals. So I ask you, what swings you in and out of your alignment?